Good morning, colleagues. As you see, I'm joined by some of the colleagues from within the Ministry of Justice and from the Press Directorate at State House. They are well-known individuals, so I shan't go into details introducing everyone in the interest of time. And may I also reiterate the apology. I know we were scheduled to begin at 11, but of course we had a couple of other matters to attend to, hence starting a little bit late. I'm grateful for your indulgence in that regard. Colleagues, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the press statement I'm about to release relates to the fight against corruption in general and in respect of some of the matters that we have seen occurring in the public domain. These obviously are of key significance to the general public, hence the issuance of this statement. After I read the statement, you will have an opportunity to ask here any questions or to raise any concerns as the case may be. Thank you. So I would like to welcome you all to this press briefing in which we shall address matters relating to the fight against corruption generally and matters of public interest that have taken center stage recently. Distinguished men, countrymen and women, members of the press, the Ministry of Justice reaffirms its mission statement of facilitating the dispensation of justice and enhancement of good governance as provided under the Service Delivery Charter. In this regard, the Ministry shall continue to play its facilitative role as provided under Gazette Notice number 1123 of 2021, which expressly provides for the statutory functions, portfolios, and composition of government. We, in this regard, view ourselves as the custodians of public interest in matters of good governance and the rule of law. Therefore, where concerns arise in the execution of the mandate of those entrusted with executing public functions, we, as the Ministry of Justice, are duty-bound to address those concerns concisely in the interest of the public in general, but within the confines of the law. It is in this regard that we wish to also reiterate the New Dawn administration's commitment to the fight against corruption and upholding the rule of law as emphasized by His Excellency the President of the Republic of Zambia, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, on numerous occasions. In terms of the fight against corruption, the Ministry shall continue to uphold and respect the institutional and functional independence of the key stakeholders charged with championing that fight, including but not limited to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, as provided under Article 180, Sub-Article 7 of the Constitution of the Republic of Zambia, and constitutionally established investigative commissions, which include the Anti-Corruption Commission, the Drug Enforcement Commission, and the Zambia Police Service, among others. However, we must emphasize, as custodians of the public interest aforementioned, that the Ministry is duty-bound to forestall, within the confines of the law, any abuse of the Constitution and the law by those mandated to uphold it through the exercise of public functions. Distinguished guests, countrymen and women, members of the press, this leads me to the topical issue of the day, that being the role of the learned Director of Public Prosecutions in the fight against corruption, given the recent occurrences that have gained significant public interest and speculation. Unfortunately, the public sentiments have by and large questioned the manner in which the DPP has conducted herself in relation to the prosecution of certain individuals, among them the former liquidator of KCM, Mr. Milingo. We are alive to the fact that these matters are at various stages within the court system and as such that they are sub judice and cannot be discussed at great length in regard to their merits or otherwise. We shall thus limit this statement to matters of general administration as regards the functions of the office of the DPP, without delving into the substantive allegations before various courts. Countrymen and women, distinguished guests, members of the press, in relation to the investigative, arrest, and prosecutorial roles, the Ministry expects investigative commissions and those entrusted and bestowed with prosecutorial duties to operate within their statutory established mandates. The mandate of the DPP, as provided under Article 180, sub-articles 3 and 4 of the Constitution, provides that, Article 183, I'll quickly read these. The DPP is the chief prosecutor for the government and head of the National Prosecutions Authority. The DPP may institute and undertake criminal proceedings against a person before a court other than a court martial for an offense alleged to have been committed by that person. B, take over and continue criminal proceedings instituted or undertaken by another. And C, discontinue at any stage before judgment is delivered criminal proceedings instituted or undertaken by the DPP or any other person or authority. Further, in the exercise of prosecutorial functions by the DPP, there is a specific provision under Article 180, sub-article 7 of the Constitution, which provides that the DPP shall not be subject to the direction, or control of a person or an authority in the performance of the functions of that office, except that the DPP shall have regard to the public interest, administration of justice, the integrity of the judicial system, and the need to prevent and avoid abuse of the legal process. In a nutshell, what we can discern from clause 7 from sub-article 7 of Article 180 of the Constitution is that the exercise of the functional and institutional independence of the DPP must be guided by the following principles. 1, the public interest. 2, administration of justice. 3, integrity in the judicial system. And 4, need to prevent and avoid abuse of the legal process. The long and short of the foregoing, distinguished members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, is that the DPP enjoys discretion in the exercise of her role. Contrary to the speculation that has taken hold in the public domain to the effect that His Excellency the President can direct the DPP in the exercise of her functions, the converse is actually true. The only caveat to the exercise of the DPP's functions is that she must do so within the law, failure to which she must be held to account, as no one is above the law. To this end, we wish to bring all speculation to an end which suggests that the Presidency has interfered in the DPP's function in any way, including by issuing instructions to grant to immunity to any persons facing criminal proceedings in Zambia. No such instructions have ever been issued, as doing so would be abhorrent to the principle of the New Dawn government to protect institutions of governance and the rule of law. We thus wish to make it clear, for the avoidance of any doubt, that any action taken by the DPP in the exercise of her office or in the execution of her office has been done unilaterally by her in her sole discretion and in the purported exercise of her constitutional mandate. In the same vein, we wish to make it absolutely clear that it is not the policy of the New Dawn government for the President to meet and negotiate with any person that is in conflict with the law for the purposes of subverting the course of justice. Kindly take note. Distinguished guests, countrymen and women, members of the press, the question that begs an answer is whether the learned DPP has exercised her functions within the confines of the law and in the public interest. Our initial assessment in answer to that question is that there have been significant lapses on the part of the DPP which require thorough, independent and fair investigation by relevant bodies. In this regard, we are aware that various citizens have approached the Judicial Complaints Commission with complaints against the DPP. The JCC's mandate, among other things, is to independently investigate and consider such complaints with a view to ultimately redressing them in accordance with the law. Suffice to say, however, that as custodians of the public interest and given the importance of the matters at hand, the Ministry hereby wishes to take this opportunity to urge the JCC to expedite its consideration of the complaints before it, so as not only to afford the learned DPP a platform on which to explain her actions, but also to put an end to the public speculation over these very important issues. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, members of the press, I thank you. At this point, we'll take questions.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for that statement. We are going to take 3 questions, and we'll allow the Minister to answer the 3 questions, and then we'll continue like that. As you ask the question, please try to make sure that you introduce yourself. There's a hand there, there's another one here, and there's another one from this lady here.
Good morning. My name is Ivy from Zambian Business Times. Minister, are you confirming that the President, Bradford Machila, and the Vice President did not hold any meeting with Mr. Milingo?
Next.
Okay, my question is similar to what she has asked. While the President did not issue instructions, was State House part of the negotiations? Because what we read yesterday in the petition that has been filed before the Constitutional Court is that there was a bargain, and there were some people from State House that were part of the bargain, and among them are cases like Christopher Mundia there, the Attorney General as well. Maybe we can get a response in that regard. My other question also...
Just one question. At this point, just introduce yourself.
My name is Darius Junior from Diamond TV.
Then our lady here.
Basically the same questions.
Okay, if it is the same question, can we have another question?
No, I'm addressing it to Mr. Wale. Yes. Mr. Wale, we remember that we had asked you if there was such a meeting that took place between State House officials in which you were, in your words, you said it was nonsensical and such things did not happen. So we'd like to find out from you if you still stand by it.
With your own indulgence, Honorable Minister, I don't know at what point Mr. Wale is going to answer that question, because I thought they are supposed to ask
Let me answer, and then that might... thank you, colleagues, members of the press. I think you have noted right from the outset of this press briefing that I stated that matters are before court. Some of the questions that you have asked relate to specific allegations that are before court. Certainly, as the Ministry of Justice, we are not going to defend this matter in the public domain through the press. At an appropriate time, an affidavit in response to the petition that has been filed will be filed into court, where all the allegations that have been put forward will be dealt with. So please, even as we ask, I think you are all alive to the rule against savages. We don't want to be cited for contempt. That's why this statement has been limited to the general principles relating to how this government wants to approach the question of the fight against corruption. And one of those general principles I reiterated was that it is not the policy of this government to meet with persons who are in conflict with the law. It is not the policy of His Excellency the President to meet with persons who are in conflict with the law and undertake any sort of negotiation with them for purposes of subverting the course of justice. I think I was very, very clear. And we should take a leaf from what I have said in respect of that particular aspect. So please, let's avoid asking questions about the substantive allegations and assuming that the substantive allegations are true. You assume that meetings took place and so on and so forth. That's one side of the story only. Be patient, wait for the correct documents to be filed into court, and you will get your answers, which by that time will be in the public domain, because as you know, court proceedings are a matter of public record. Thank you.
Take another set of 3 questions. The 2, the lady and the gentleman there, and then we'll take from this other end. So we'll start with the lady there.
All right, thank you so much. My name is Prudence Chota from Cabinet TV. You've spoken to the fact that there are a lot of outcries about the conduct of the DPP, but also the fact that debt was involved in this issue. So we want to find out, did debt act in accordance with the law by rearresting Mr. Milingo? Thank you.
Next question.
My name is Makoto Nakaka from the last newspaper. I just wanted to find out if government has presented any complaint before the judicial complaints commission, owing to the lapses that the minister had mentioned regards to operations.
My name is Mukwe Manchilala from Millennium Radio. Whereas we appreciate the issues raised by the minister in his statement, my impression is there's a narrative that is being pushed by a certain section of society that State House and government are pushing an agenda to hunt out the DPP from her office. I would want to get State House position as well as the Ministry of Justice position on this matter. Thank you.
With your indulgence, I think the lady who asked the question was not one of the but
all right.
Can we have the 4th question?
Thank you very much. My name is Rose Wanda, and I think she spoke my mind when she was asking, but I will just amplify her question. With regards to, you've told, Honorable Minister, you have brought us to speak on the duties and the roles of the DPP, being the Chief Prosecutor's Authority. I also wanted to find out if at all, if the DPP enters a knowledge, does the Drug Enforcement Commission has the powers to re-prosecute the case that was at hand with the same charges? I wanted you to also bring us on speed the duties of the Drug Enforcement Commission as well.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister will take up those questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for those questions. I think they're all in one genre. So probably my response will deal with the topical issues from those questions in one cut. One of the questions that have been put forward, which I want to address first, is the perception, Mr. Chilala, you say that there is a public perception that the President, at his State House, and government generally have got an agenda to push the DPP from her office. I think we need to dispel that public sentiment. The unfortunate situation we find ourselves in the advent of social media is that once a notion has been put out there, a narrative has been formed, it tends to snowball. And then the general public starts to think that that narrative is the absolute and gospel truth. I want to reiterate that, again, as we have said repeatedly, and as His Excellency the President has said repeatedly, we believe in operating via the rule of law. So what you are suggesting or is the public sentiment goes contrary to our very ethos that we are running government under, which is that we respect independent institutions. If you were to take your question and flip it on its head, really you would ask yourself then, if there is such an agenda by government in its entirety against an individual office holder, what would have taken government so long to act? Clearly, there is no such agenda on the part of government, and this is why even in my statement and on the part specifically of His Excellency the President, and that is why in my statement I've ended with beseeching the independent institution that is charged with dealing with these matters, that is the JCC, to expedite the work that it is doing, so that the rule of law prevails. It is a platform which will allow for all these issues that you have mentioned to be ventilated. It will allow the person at the center of this controversy in the office of the DPP to put forward the views that need to be put forward by her, and ultimately, if necessary, to exculpate herself. And likewise, it will give the complainants, there are already numerous complaints that are before the JCC, it will give the complainants a platform upon which to ventilate their issues as well. In other words, what we are talking about is that whatever processes are being followed by the independent entity being the JCC, those are going to be done in a fair manner, in keeping with the rules of natural justice and in accordance with the law. There is no witch hunt of anybody, as the case may be. I think my answer is very, very clear. There is also a question whether government has presented a complaint against the JCC. Naturally, we have not, because of course government wants to maintain an independent position and allow the JCC to operate functionally without any interference. So the members of the public that are concerned with what is going on with the country, with what is going on in the execution of the office of the DPP, are equal to the task. And as I speak, I'm aware that various matters have been brought to their attention by way of complaint to the JCC around the recent events that we have seen. So no, government cannot and has not presented any complaint to the JCC. The question as to whether the DEC has the power to rearrest following an nolle prosequi, the Law Association of Zambia has given a position on that, and as you know, that is one of our key stakeholders as the Ministry of Justice. We take cognizance of what the Law Association of Zambia has said, and we equally take the view that the law is very clear as to whom exercises the investigative and other powers of arrest and so on and so forth. And the separation that exists between the investigative wings on the one hand and the power to prosecute on the other, which is in the DPP's realm. So the short answer to your question is that the DEC, yes, has got the power to rearrest and does not require to take instructions from anybody in doing that investigation and rearrest whether or not a nolle has been entered.
Honorable, with the indulgence, I meant to prosecute and not only to rearrest.
The prosecutorial functions ultimately lie with the Director of Public Prosecutions and the office. And of course, you'll be aware that in some of the various pieces of legislation, there are embedded prosecutors that are part of the law enforcement agencies. But ultimately, the Constitution is clear that the power to prosecute lies with the DPP.
We are going to take two last questions. I want those who have not yet asked. Yes, there. I want another one. Okay, you can go ahead.
My name is Gambela Musi.
What's the name?
Gambela Musi. That's not my government name. Okay, so basically, mine is to. Okay. So we just want to find out how many of those complaints have we received, if at all. How many are independent people? Because some, for instance,
people are accusing Pilato of being a supporter to the ruling party. So even if he did that, people were calling him booty licking and whatnot. So I just want to find out how many are just people and Zambians and independent without taking any side, whether PO or PND. And what are you telling us? Because the JCC, most of the bosses there are appointed. So many people right now, even on the comments, are saying, even if you, as he says, we are waiting for them to expedite the matter, which is the DPP, they feel they're still going to take government side, or maybe at a getting, so they don't have any.
Okay, the last one.
There are two questions, so we wait for the second one.
Okay. Honorable Minister, just wanted you to highlight on what you said, that there are significant lapses in your statement. You said in regards to the office of the DPP that require investigations. What really do you mean by that, and when are we seeing these investigations starting? And also with regards to the JCC, the complaints that are being brought there, we're aware that there are some people that are yet to be ratified. So do they form a quorum for these complaints to be heard?
Thank you very much for that.
Check the first one. The question is how many complaints have gone to JCC? We can't know ourselves. Even as we are sitting here, maybe other people have taken their complaints, or maybe others have withdrawn. So the JCC is the best institution to answer that question. We don't know. They don't pass through here. The JCC is an independent commission. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, please. To add on to what the learned Attorney General has said, there were a couple of questions relating to one which the learned AG has already addressed. The second, I think, and part of that question related to the question of independence of the JCC, given that they are appointed by the higher authority. I think the question of independence, it cannot arise. If we were to go even to the part of the question that you asked, the composition currently of the JCC is, aside from the chairperson who was appointed and sworn in by His Excellency the President, the other members currently sitting on the JCC were appointed by the previous administration. So that should answer your question on the question of whether there is independence. What is essentially looked at is the professional aspect of that body to execute its mandate professionally, rather than looking at who appointed them and so on and so forth. As for the members who were appointed by His Excellency, you are aware that the announcement was made, I think, a day before Parliament, or even on the actual day that Parliament recessed, meaning that the process of ratification has not been undertaken, and those do not participate in the functions of the JCC until such time that Parliament would have ratified them, or otherwise, as the case may be. So they are not part of the panel. Of course, we're not supposed to go into all this detail in any event, but for the sake of transparency, they're not part of the panel that's currently there to consider matters before the JCC. And for those members that are existing, when they do convene as a complete set, including the area appointees, yes, they are able to form a quorum. So I hope that answers your question. As you can see, the intention is to be as candid and open as possible when dealing with matters of a national character. I think Mr. Walia has got a couple of things he'd like to add to what has been stated here. I thank you.
It's not a couple of things, it's just one.
Just Honorable Minister, on the, when you say that there are lapses, office of the DPP and the investigations, just wanted to understand what really you meant by that, and when these investigations would start.
Well, again, that's our assessment of the manner in which these matters have been addressed. Shows a number of lapses in terms of, for instance, the issue of giving directives to the DEC on how to perform the functions of that office. But the critical thing to note is that these matters are of a confidential nature. And even though I'm answering you, the proper government processes are such that this is an internal issue that ought to be addressed internally. Or, as is the case now, that it's in public domain because there is a complaint that has been issued to the JCC. We are able to speak to some of that. But as a ministry, we have no role to play unless we are called as witnesses in the proceedings of the JCC because it's independent. And in the event that we are called as witnesses, we will be able to give our professional assessment based on the legal provisions, the Constitution, and other provisions of the law as to why we believe there are lapses. So for the purposes of your question, I think I've answered to a large degree. The other matters, of course, will be properly dealt with. In the event that there is a hearing that's convened by the JCC, we don't know whether a hearing will be convened or not. That is entirely up to the JCC. What we are saying is that for the public interest, let the JCC expedite its consideration of the issues and give the appropriate guidance going forward.
What about the consent? What about the consent agreement? Honorable Minister, Justice Minister, do you feel?
Mr. Chairman, I think we just talked about the content. What you're talking about is the substantive content of an allegation which is before court. So please, that will be properly addressed in the affidavit to be filed by the state in response to the court proceedings. Because now you are making an assumption that what has been stated by one side in a dispute that is before court is the gospel truth, when in fact that might not be the case. So we don't want to now go into defending an action before you, but we didn't want to leave the country speculating without any sort of statement being put forward as to these various matters, because it's unhealthy for us all to go on our social media platforms and become pseudo-lawyers and start talking about matters which we don't have a clear knowledge and interest about. So at least I think we've been able to give a statement, a position that will put everybody at rest as to some of the critical issues that are at play in the country.
And can I just emphasize, and this is for purposes of the question that you asked, and I think the Zambian people need to be aware that the president has never met, and he will never meet any individual in conflict with the law, especially not for purposes that can be understood or seen to be undermining the rule of law or the law in itself. This is a government of laws, this is a president of law and order. Such a thing would never happen, and it will never happen. And to that extent, I wish to reaffirm and confirm that we stand by the initial statements that we issued. Any other matters incidental to that, as the Honourable Minister has stated, they are now matters before the court. And because we're a government of law and order and respect the rule of law, we must reaffirm the need for all of us to respect the independence of the courts. And they receive all the facts, and they review that, and they'll render their own independent decision. And I think it's important that we leave that matter precisely at that.
But when is the president holding a press conference?
Excuse me. Honorable Minister, would you like to conclude so that
there seem to be one or two burning issues. We are not in any hurry.
My question is, looking at the controversies between the DPP, are we assured as a nation that wrongdoers will be brought to book, or we should forget about the fight against corruption?
Another question? Who has not yet spoken? Okay, you can go ahead.
Well, Honorable Minister, sir, mine is having looked at what has been going on over the years, we've seen that there has been interference between the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. But I want to ask this point, hoping you speak as the executive. I know that the UPND, the New Dawn government, intends to ensure that strong houses, strong institutions are formed to ensure that they are independent. With regard to the appointment of the DPP, we understand that the JCT may suggest somebody that can be there, but it's up to the president to consent, to give consent to who can be the DPP. We've seen that also with the Chief Justice. and that is the executive, like over state governance, therefore formed.
Third question. Third question, or can I say the last question? Okay, thank you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you so very much. And I'm grateful that we have generated sufficient interest in our discussion today to keep the members of the press here with us. We do appreciate the role that you play as the fourth estate, and for us it's important that there must be continual engagement between the fourth estate and the government, as it were. That being said, there is a question as to, first of all, will wrongdoers be brought to book, and is the fight against the corruption to be thrown out the window? I think this is the very essence of our being here today, and the theme of the press statement that I've just issued is speaking to the very question that you have asked. There's nothing to prevent the fight against corruption continuing. In fact, it's gaining momentum, if you might want to know. I'm sure you've observed in the press the various statements that the law enforcement agencies have issued in respect of seizures that have taken place, arrests that have been pending and that have taken place. And they are doing so independently. And so I think we are just beginning to reach the apex of the whole fight against corruption. We are seeing a lot of traction, and I can assure you that the Zambian public, the people of Zambia, will soon begin to see, once these matters go to trial and you begin to have the public taking direct information as the matters progress in court, you will then be able to see what the law enforcement agencies have done. In short, the fight against corruption is ongoing. It is a strong fight. There are no sacred cows. There will be no persons that will be left out if they are wrongdoers. Whatever machinations they might try, we are convicted to ensure that the Zambian people know what transpired and that recoveries are the highest possible. And that is a commitment which we are unwaveringly following, and His Excellency the President has been very, very clear that those that have taken away from the Zambian people will be asked to pay, and they will do so through the established means of the rule of law. So please rest assured, and the Zambian people can rest assured that the fight is ongoing. Let those who believe that they will escape the long arm of the law continue to do so. They shall be visited, and they shall be visited in a very professional manner, as we've continued to do, respecting their human rights and so on and so forth. But it's happening, and it's happening in a big way. Interference between the three arms of government. You've talked about the process of appointing. This is a perennial debate that keeps on going on. It's not a debate that we can conclude today. There are those with the school of thought that the current systems where you have key offices, the CJ and others, being ratified by a separate arm of government, entails that we have sufficient independence. Another school of thought is that we can make these institutions more robust, for example, by diluting the powers of the President in general. These are debates that are going to be ongoing as we continue with the process of law reform in the country. As you know, we have been mandated under the governance pillar by which this government wants to administer the affairs of the nation to address questions of law reform, strengthening of the institutions, and of course, constitutional reform, all of which roll up into one ideal of ensuring that we better Zambia and create a legal environment in which all of us as citizens can prosper. So those are matters that are being looked at ongoing. The only thing that I can urge is for the Zambian people again to use this platform to be participatory and to bring forward their concerns and their issues. As the New Dawn government, our door is open and we are receptive to any ideas, any criticism, as long as it is fair criticism and not based on insults. We want to make sure that we are free in the manner in which we exercise our rights collectively as a people. So you can rest assured, Mr. Chifunda, that we are looking at these matters actively.
Any last words from the Special Assistant to the President and the Attorney General before the Minister concludes?
Thank you very much. I suppose this goes to the Zambian people. We were just having a discussion with the President this morning that you, the Zambian people, can rest be assured that we are working to serve you the best way that we can. And there will be no relenting on that. Right now, there is an understanding and we agree that people want to see results, robust results on the fight against corruption front. And as the Minister has said, there will be no relenting. There will be no sacred cows. Anybody who has crossed the boundaries of the law, they will be held accountable, however long it takes. The President has continuously emphasized, and will continue to emphasize, that the fight against corruption will be done within the boundaries of the law. We will not break the law as a way and means of fighting corruption. But also that we shall continue to respect the rights of these individuals, even the accused, as we seek to hold each and every one of them accountable. And they will be held accountable. So the Zambian people can have faith, the utmost faith in the President and the men around the President, that we shall work tirelessly to rid this country of the corruption epidemic that has run and has become endemic. And everybody is upset about it. And we are all upset about it because this is exactly why we're here. And we're determined to put a decisive end to it, and we will and we shall put a decisive end to it.
Thank you very much.
Well, for me, I just want to encourage you to enjoy your press freedom responsibly. Thank you.
Honorable Minister, you can conclude that this case.
Thank you. I think most of what we've come here for has been said. It remains to once again thank our partners in the press for coming through and for the questions that you have asked. This does not end our discussion, our discourse. I am available, we are available, if required, to further address these issues. I know one of the media houses already has asked for an interview tomorrow morning, and we shall avail ourselves. Let us just, as the learned AG has said, remember that we hold a responsibility as members of the press not to fan certain narratives that are put forward and ultimately are not in the best interest of ourselves as the people of Zambia. We have to be able to hear both sides of the story. We have to be able to be fair and balanced in the use of this powerful platform that the media and the press enjoy. And we want to be partners in ensuring that we always do what is best for the people of Zambia. We are not saying that we are infallible or that we can't lapse ourselves, but what we are saying is that there is a better way of dealing with matters of national interest than running with speculation and allowing for certain narratives to be fanned. So we ask you, we're humbly requesting that let us be partners in that regard for the better interest of the people of Zambia. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kashinga, just open and then we'll allow the Minister and his delegation